Hi, good morning, Dr. Lara. Welcome to the Global Summit 2023 New York event. How are you doing today?
I'm good today. Thank you, Melinda. It's a pleasure to be here.
You are looking so pretty today.
Thank you.
So, yes, Dr. Laura, before we start your presentation, I will give you a brief introduction of yours. So, later, you can continue with your presentation. Okay. So, yes, Dr. Laura Darling is an author, keynote speaker, and scholar specializing in leadership and how to use neuroscience for improved outcomes. She is an authority in the neuroscience of leadership, learning, and change. Dr. Lara is an expert in stress reduction techniques using mindfulness based stress reduction, cognitive behavioral therapy, neurolinguistic programming, and other therapeutic methods. She has 25 years of corporate leadership experience in complex, highly regulated, rapidly changing industries, building and leading teams to exceed expectations, and 15 years as an adjunct professor designing curriculum courses and teaching. She holds an MBA in technology management and multiple counseling and power skill certifications. Dr. Laura is an experienced coach and mentor who gets people and organizations to a better place through personal development and cutting edge education, training, and professional development. So, this was really a wonderful introduction today. So, yes, Dr. Laura, you can occupy the stage.
Okay.
So, do you want me to play the presentation from my side?
Yes, please. Yes, Melinda. Thank you. We're having very bad weather here in Philadelphia. It's stormy and rainy.
Yes,
So I
I
want
can
to thank you
understand.
so much for doing that.
No problem. I'm here to help you. Yes. Can you see the screen?
I can. Yes.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So welcome everyone to Gaming Your Brain to Thrive. During this presentation, you'll see the little game controller and brain. And this is a signal that you are going to experience a trick and train your brain using neuroscience of learning and change. Next slide, please. There's a big problem. The way we think about mental health is crazy. There is little in the way of training or education on how to recognize, manage, and prevent mental health disorders like trauma, stress, anxiety, and depression, which I'm calling TSAD, until you are significantly impaired or experience a life catastrophe. This is backwards. This leaves the majority of us living the fast life, fearful, angry, selfish, and temperamental, all symptoms of unresolved trauma, stress, anxiety, and depression, or TSAD. Next slide, please. When we talk about thriving, thriving means winning at the thriving game. The thriving game is the game of life, and winning equals living an abundant and happy life, unencumbered by trauma, stress, anxiety, and depression. This state is really a state of flourishing, growth, prosperity, in which you can fulfill your potential and achieve a sense of fulfillment and happiness. People who win at the thriving game have high levels of positive emotions, a strong sense of purpose, a healthy self image, which enables them to overcome obstacles, adapt to change, and maintain resilience in the face of adversity. The thriving game is the most important game you will ever play. Let's go deeper. Next slide, please. Let's talk about trauma, stress, and anxiety and depression specifically. These are four huge obstacles. Again, TSAD. Next slide, please. When we look at the statistics, they are overwhelming. 60% of adults report childhood trauma. 25%, 26% of children experience trauma before the age of 4. Trauma is pervasive. We all carry it. 83% of the workforce suffers from work-related stress. It is the most common mental illness. It is pervasive, I'm sorry. 20% of the population suffers from anxiety. 1/5 of the population, 50% of the people who suffer with anxiety also suffer with depression. Next slide, please. When we look at these conditions, we see a high interdependency among the four. Each one of these is a combination of physiological and psychological responses to an overwhelming threat or internal, external stressors. You can see the different definitions here. Trauma is more long-term. Stress is more short-term. Anxiety is an emotional state characterized by recurring, intrusive, worrisome thoughts, also called rumination, and it is associated with feelings of fear and tension. Depression is a negative affective state ranging from unhappiness, pessimism, and despondency that interferes with daily life. An affective state is simply where your emotions and feelings control your consciousness. Next slide, please. Unresolved trauma really is the gateway and a root cause to many mental health conditions, including any physical, cognitive, or behavioral dysfunctional mechanism you use to try to cope with the frightening, messy, uncomfortable emotions and feeling caused by trauma. Trauma and stress are very closely related, and the drivers are from your 5 senses and memories. So you see here the trauma stress tree, okay? Trauma is different from stress because it is more long lasting, can have several years, decades. Stress is a normal natural response to a threat, but it is more shorter term, and it includes what is called eustress, which is positive stress that tends to motivate you, focus you, and move you out of your comfort zone. Understand that these are physiological and psychological responses, but I want to target on trauma because it is gateway or root cause. Next slide, please. So types of trauma I call crawbies. We all carry them. And here you can see each type of trauma. Childhood trauma occurs between ages of 6 and 12. Relational trauma is difficult, abusive relationships. Attachment trauma, infants and very young and emotionally, physically neglectful and abusive parental relationships. Work trauma, trauma that happens at work. Buried trauma is trauma that you can't remember because you repressed it. Intergenerational trauma is trauma that is passed down from our ancestors. We're going to get deeper into this in a few minutes. Epigenetic trauma is trauma that changes the chemical mark in gene expression. So just remember, crawbies, we all carry them, and they are mostly at the subconscious level. Next slide. Symptoms are all over the place with respect to trauma, stress, anxiety, and depression. Again, I'm not going to read through these. A copy of the presentation is available to anyone. Physiological symptoms affect every single body system, and there are corresponding psychological symptoms. Okay, they can go anywhere. Next slide, please. So TSAD triggers. Anything can trigger trauma, stress, anxiety, and depression. A trigger is a psychological stimulus, any object, event, or experience that sets off a sensory or behavioral response that prompts involuntary recall of a previous traumatic or stressful event. Again, 5 senses and memories are driving these, mostly at the subconscious level in your brain wiring. Triggers are personal, specific, subtle, and difficult to predict. Your TSAT radar is different than mine. Again, a touch, taste, sight, smell, sound, or memory can trigger a trauma, stress response, or anxiety and depression. Next slide, please. TSAT impact on the brain. McLennan said that we really have 3 brains from an evolutionary perspective. And you see the 3 brains here: our reptilian brain, instinctual brain, our emotional brain, and our executive functioning brain. Because these are encased in our skull, we forget about them. But these pieces are as real as your fingers and toes. What happens during TSAT is the limbic system, the emotional brain, specifically the amygdala and the hippocampus, override the executive functioning system, your prefrontal cortex, logical and reasoning, and the prefrontal cortex executive system shuts down, and you are operating on emotional brain, which is often incorrect. Next slide, please. So there's a brain body impact here. And again, it's the emotional brain override, also known as the meltdown. Okay. The emotional brain overrides the executive brain, and your mind and body are responding to threat. And here you can see, if you remember this from high school, the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest, and the sympathetic nervous system, which fires off your flight, fright, freeze, fawn response under trauma or stress. Next slide, please. So trauma stress survival responses occur in 4 ways. There are the 4 F's, or the 4 horses of trauma stress. Fight. If you think you just might be able to handle the threat, your brain readies your body for fight mode. Attack the danger source. If you think you cannot handle the threat but can avoid it, your brain readies the body for flight mode. Run from the danger, all occurring at the subconscious level. If you think you can't fight or flee, the brain readies the body for freeze mode. If you think you can't fight, flee, or freeze, the brain readies the body for fawn mode, which is the please and appease or codependency mode. Next slide, please. So it's a matter of the trauma go round or the stress go round, and these 4 horses. Your trauma or stress triggers are your ticket to ride the trauma or stress go round. And here you can see the responses. It's important to note here under your conscious level, subconscious level, and you can ride 4 different horses. You can fight, freeze, and then later fawn. So it's a matter of identifying your trauma or stress horses. Next slide, please. Meet your boss and MPS. The fact is, you have all the equipment you need to thrive. You were born with it. You just don't know how to use it. Again, no training or education. So let me introduce you to your boss, brain operating super system, and your mental positioning system, or MPS. Next slide, please. Your brain is more miraculous than any other creation. It's your body's most complex organ. It's more advanced, efficient, and has more raw computing power than the most impressive supercomputer ever built. Information in your brain travels an impressive 268 miles per hour, and its storage capacity is unlimited. It consists of 100 billion brain cells called neurons. That's equivalent to the number of stars in the universe. Each brain cell connects with other brain cells, forming about 1 quadrillion connections. Your brain is always working, whether awake or sleeping, on only about 12 watts of power. To put this in perspective, your laptop uses 60 watts of power. Your brain can generate 23 watts of power, enough to power a light bulb. Every invention ever created has been conceived of in the brain. Your brain operating super system is the boss, and it works like a computer operating system. A computer operating system uses software programmed to manage the hardware and software of the computer. A program is created by writing code in a particular programming language, which is compiled and interpreted into machine language that the computer can understand and execute. The program determines what actions the operating system takes. Just like a computer's operating system controls everything in the computer, your brain operating super system or boss controls everything: your hardware, physical body, and your software, mental positioning system or mindset. Your brain commands your body and governs your mindset, creating your reality. A 3-pound tofu like organ moves your body, shapes your mind, develops your soul, and dictates your reality based on how it's programmed. From a biological perspective, as organic beings, this brain programming is analogous to computer programming, except from an organic perspective, your brain wiring is much more fluid and flexible and can change based on the information you feed it from your 5 senses. And this is the gift of neuroplasticity. Next slide, please. We can't see the next slide. Should be the MPS. Yes. Okay. Like a GPS, we use a biological GPS called our mental positioning system to navigate the world and make sense of our experience. Our MPS processes information from our 5 senses and memories, which serve as satellites to construct internal maps to navigate familiar and unfamiliar territory. Second by second, minute by minute, in real time, your MPS considers factors like your beliefs, memories, emotion, and reasoning to help you make decisions based on the available information, adjusting the strategies based on new information or unexpected events. Your MPS is responsible for all functioning, including consciousness, creativity, and very complicated decision making. So your MPS is more complex and capable than a GPS. Your MPS wiring selects, organizes, and interprets, responds, and reacts to information or stimuli from internal memory and external environment through your 5 senses and memories, and assigns meanings to your experience. It translates this sensory information into meaning, decisions, and actions. Brain scans evidence neuronal firing and wiring. Brain scans can detect and track changes in the brain in this connect node. Different areas lighten up under different conditions. We can distinguish people with successful traits and unsuccessful traits via brain scans. And now that we know what successful brain wiring looks like, we can create it in our MPS. Neurons, brain cells that fire together, wire together, creating your mental positioning system or your mindset. So, what we understand as mindset is brain wiring and firing. I'm going to show a brief video to show you what this actually looks like. Next slide, and can you launch the video? This is happening right now as you listen to the presentation. Can you see it lighting up? It's firing. When you see,
Can you hear?
I think it's going to launch now.
Can you able to hear the voice?
There's no voice on this one, but if you look closely, you can see it. This is actual picture of brain wiring, neuroplasticity, wiring and firing. And if you look at this, you can see the wires. It's a map in your brain that controls and directs everything. Your MPS, this wiring, reflects your blueprint of core beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and it results in your behavior or BTFBs. You can go to the next slide, Melinda. Thank you. So, where does this programming begin? Your trauma, stress, anxiety, and depression wiring begins at conception. Mind blowing. The limbic system or emotional brain begins forming at 4 weeks and is fully formed in the third trimester, recording into the MPS emotions and behaviors necessary for survival from mom and dad into memory. The fetus is preparing to respond to environmental stress by producing beta endorphins at 7 weeks. The executive brain is working at 32 weeks. Sound and neural language patterns at the third trimester. So this happens at conception and is changed or not through birth, childhood, and your life experience. Next slide, please. Brain Remedy from Henry David Thoreau. A single footstep will not make a path on the earth, so a single thought will not make a pathway in the mind. To make a deep physical path, we walk again and again. To make a deep mental path, we must think over and over the kinds of thoughts we wish to dominate our lives. And the key here is the science of neuroplasticity. Awareness, focused attention, and repetition enable the rewiring of your MPS connectome. Next slide, please. So your MPS, your biological GPS, TSAD, self-limiting beliefs, thoughts, feelings, and consequent behaviors, drinking, smoking, whatever you do to alleviate, not to feel those messy feelings, are wired in your MPS blueprint, and these are well-traveled paths. They are obstacles that limit you, and they are pervasive in modern day life. There's examples of some of these self-limiting beliefs. I am not smart enough. I can't handle this. I don't have the education or experience. okay? Wired and mostly at the subconscious level. The world is designed to distract, stress, and depress you. Equanimity, peace, and happiness aren't good for the economy because you wouldn't need more or better stuff. Once you understand this, you have a competitive edge in the thriving game. Next slide, please. To complicate things, our brain is wired with a negativity bias. This is left over from evolution and it's the instinctual brain. And this is operating at an impressive 268 miles per hour. We are wired for negativity, and this is occurring below the conscious awareness. We detect negative information faster than positive information, and negative information carries more weight, even though most of our experience is positive or neutral. Dr. Rick Hanson, author of Buddha's Brain, said it this way: our brain has a negativity bias, which means that it is like Velcro for bad and Teflon for good. So we have to learn to take in positive experiences and weaving them into the fabric of our NPS connectome. Next slide, please. So, what can you do about this? Okay. You are the boss of your brain. Because you have top down control from executive functioning, you control the brain. So, the best ways to overcome TSAD is again through neuroscience, awareness, focused attention, and repetition. You can trick and train your brain. Here's some ways you can do that. Next slide, please. This is cutting edge technology, and this is the first line of defense. Vibrotactile trigger technology uses your sense of touch to mitigate TSAD through the science and technology of neurohaptics. I'm going to show you a quick video right here. This is patch technology, but understand that your sense of touch begins with more than 4 million touch receptors on your skin. Next slide, please. And can you launch video, Melinda? I can't hear sound.
Yes, now you can hear.
Okay.
Can you hear?
I can't hear sound. This is, I'll speak to this. This is Jay showing a super patch. And this is a participant hooked up to an EEG. And this is a picture of your brain. Okay. You can see that's the emotional brain. Okay. It's okay if there's no sound. This is the emotional brain. Okay. Before patch. This is the limbic system. Put the patch on. And we see the limbic system change colors. So this patch is regulating the limbic system and nervous system. Okay, you can stop video and go to slides. Next slide, please. There's many patches available here. I'm showing you 3. Okay. Every physical, psychological, emotional function has a corresponding neurocode. Super patches has decoded the neurocode. When these ridges encounter your skin, the patch uses the receptors and the area around your skin to send neurosignal messages to your brain, and your brain decodes them and relays the messages throughout your body. Next slide, please. Okay. Again, these are non-invasive, drug-free, paraben-free, non-GMO, gluten-free, FDA registered, certified skin safe, and immediately provides relief, often in less than 10 seconds. You can go to the website here, gamingyourbrain.superpatch.com. You'll get 25% off your first order. There's an international fee may apply. Next few slides. We're almost through here, folks. So we know brain chemistry, okay? Neurotransmitters fuel the brain. About 86% of Americans have suboptimal neurotransmitters. And since neurotransmitters fuel the brain, it's a no go, no gas, no oil, no go. So you have to get physical and you have to treat the emotional, psychological. And this picture here is neuron firing. Next slide. Lots of things you can do to increase neurotransmitters. Here you see dopamine reward boosters. Again, folks, everything happens through 5 senses and memory. And here it's eat protein, eat less saturated fat, get enough sleep, meditate, get enough sunlight. Serotonin is emotional stability and well-being. Aerobic exercise, eating foods high in amino acids, practicing visualization, thinking about a positive experience, looking at photos, all send neurotransmitters to your brain. Next slide. Noradrenaline, attention and mood, exercise, sleep, small accomplishes, sound healing, meditating, dopamine-rich foods. Oxytocin is affection and attachment. Yoga, massage, meditate, emphatic listening, sharing food, petting a dog or cat. Again, 5 senses and memories. You can locate neurotransmitters testing near you to see if it's right for you. Next slide. How to overcome the negativity bias. This is simple. It's notice, shift, rewire. Notice the negativity because you're aware of it now, the negativity bias. Notice the emotional brain doing its job, trying to protect you. Thank it. Shift to a more positive thought and rewire. The longer you hold this in your attention, the positive thought, and the more repetition that you give it, helps you rewire, create new pathways. So again, awareness, focused attention, and repetition. And there's a very simple quote by Julie Andrews. When the dog bites, when the bee stings, when I'm feeling sad, I simply remember my favorite things, and then I don't feel so bad. It works every time. Julie Andrews from The Sound of Music. Next slide. Almost done here. Please reach out to me for these TSAD first aid power plays. They're grounding and discharging techniques, box breathing, polyvagal breathing, reconnecting with identity, countdown technique, meditation, discharging, get physical, cry, laugh. There's instructions for this. I'm happy to provide them. Next slide. Neuroplasticity is your secret weapon. Practice makes permanent in the Boss MPS. With awareness, focused attention, and repetition, rewiring using empowering BTFBs becomes stronger and the old wiring weakens. Every time you use a new wiring, you're not using an old wiring. So this is how you create new programming for thriving. Either way, if you're using the old self-limiting BTFBs or the new programming, it's a use it or lose it deal. The thriving game never ends, and you can master it. Last quotation is from Yoga, Spirituality, and Wellness Guru from a galaxy far, far away. Do or not do. There is no try. It is about practice and repetition. Next slide. Thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure to be here. Here's my contact information. I'm happy to make the PowerPoint and the TSEB first aid available to everyone. And look for my book coming soon.
Thank you, Dr. Laura, for explaining us in a detail, in a PPT format, in a PowerPoint presentation, explaining each and everything, each and every slide. So to make us understand in a constructive way. Thank you so much. And we have a question for our audience. Here is the question. So, what step can you take to prioritize your mental health and well-being in the face of anxiety?
The first step is raising awareness. And through my book, you'll go through 5 levels. The first level is raising awareness, and that's pulling from the subconscious what's troubling you. And it's usually trauma that occurred earlier in life in childhood that you're not aware of. And it could be current stress. So the first step is raising awareness, and that's introspective, looking at yourself and your behavioral and thinking patterns. When you're aware,
Well,
you can change.
yes. So, and one more question to this. Any specific situations or triggers tend to evoke feelings of anxiety?
That's very personal, okay? What makes me anxious is going to be different than what makes you anxious. And here's an example, okay? I know several people who are deathly afraid of thunderstorms, okay? To me, they're very soothing. And I understand where that came from. My Italian grandmother told me, don't be afraid of thunderstorms. The angels are cleaning in heaven and they're moving furniture. My Polish grandmother told me that the angels were bowling and that's what was making the noise. Okay. So I don't have a fear of thunderstorms. It's very calming and soothing to me. So this is very personal work, Melinda, digging deep into your own stuff and your own patterns. Does that make sense?
Yes, Dr. Laura, thank you so much for your insightful presentation today. You have well answered for our questions. So yes, everyone has their own way of anxiety. So we cannot differentiate. So yes, it's really an amazing speech. And yes, if you want to contact Dr. Lori, so you can email her, or you can go through her website as well. So can you please tell us your website name? Can you please shout out your website?
The website for the book is under construction, so it's not live yet, but you can reach me at Laura Dowling, LAURADOWLING 456 at gmail.com or on LinkedIn. That information is on the last slide of the deck.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Lara. Thank you for attending
Thank
this session.
you. See you guys in the next session. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yes, yes. Please join our next speaker, Dr. Caroline. So she's waiting. So let's join for another session. So this is Melinda Roy. I'm the host for the 2 days Global Summit 2023 in New York, USA.